Welcome to Food, Environment and Health Channel. Today we will shed light on the food science issues and explain why understanding nutrition is a slow and meticulous process, often leaving room for misinformation and the marketing of miracle health solutions. Why do we change our views on diet every 10 years? I will take this opportunity to give an example with colon cancer research. Namely, a number of years ago, some simple studies pointed to a correlation between obesity and colon cancer, while other just as simple studies showed a link between colon cancer and the intake of a large amount of fats, especially of animal origin. However, due to the simplicity of these studies, their conclusions were used only as starting hypotheses for subsequent research. Afterward, slightly more advanced studies were conducted, which lasted a very long time and during which the eating habits of a large number of healthy individuals were monitored. It turned out that individuals who developed colon cancer during the study predominantly based their diet on red meat, especially veal. Because the question that now arises, and which could only be resolved through an experiment, and a very long one, is red meat really the cause of colon cancer, or is it about the lack of plant-based foods in the diet? In other words, is the cause of colon cancer high intake of pork and veal, or insufficient intake of fruits and vegetables, which are sources of protective substances and dietary fibers? Do people who eat grilled meat in a flatbread or a sandwich made of white bread and pork neck steak have the same chances of getting sick as people who eat roast veal with a salad? While waiting for this conclusion, let's browse through magazines dealing with nutrition, and those most cited at the forefront of science, to see what research topics are current today. For example, here are a few. Dietary fibers regulate intestinal flora and suppress liver inflammation and systemic inflammation by preventing liver fibrosis in experimental mice. The frequency and predictors of weight loss during induction therapy for acute lymphoblastic leukemia in children. The impact of long-term intake of vitamin D supplements on metabolic status in vitamin D deficient patients with diabetes type 2 with pronounced atherosclerosis. And here is a slightly more practical one, but with not particularly surprising results: the prospective link between the intake of carbonated beverages and depressive symptoms. As expected, the authors showed that consuming more than 4 glasses of carbonated drinks per week is associated with the occurrence of depressive symptoms. Surely these are not studies that you are eager to read, because most of the research published in some high-ranking journals has a very narrowly defined goal. It's not easy to get to the truth about health and nutrition, and there are several reasons for this. Besides the fact that studies are very expensive because they are conducted on a large number of respondents and last exceptionally long, there are other problems, and here they are. Metabolic uniqueness. The fact is that there are significant variations among people and a very wide range of reactions to food that depend on genetic predisposition, which makes it much harder for researchers to reach some basic facts, such as, for example, the optimal level of nutrients that an average person should intake. Inadequate data linkage. For example, colorectal cancer encompasses 3 malignant diseases that affect 3 different parts of the intestine: cancer of the proximal, distal part of the intestine, and rectum cancer. It can happen that medical evidence is not precise and all patients are recorded as suffering from bowel cancer. In that case, the researcher would not be able to draw the right conclusions because each of the 3 diseases is triggered by different factors. Thus, for example, epidemiological studies show that distal colon cancer can be linked to fat intake, while rectum cancer is more often associated with alcohol intake. Complexity of food items. How does coffee affect health? This simple question gets a little complicated by the fact that coffee contains about 2,000 chemical compounds. Attempts to introduce a reductionist approach to research have not yielded results because the representation of various chemical compounds and their reactions cannot be investigated by using a supplement that has only one chemical compound as an active substance in the experiment. For example, research has shown that the use of carotenoids, compounds found in red, orange, and yellow fruits and vegetables representing the plant form of vitamin A, can reduce the risk of lung cancer. However, the question is whether this effect is due to the action of lycopene, the strongest antioxidant from the carotenoid class, which researchers immediately isolated and began selling supplements, or the synergistic effect of several types of carotenoids found together in natural foods. It is needless to say that, while the research was ongoing, many lycopene supplements found buyers among those who wanted to protect themselves from malignant diseases. Moreover, the biggest irony is that research has revealed another important detail, that is, carotenoids have a protective effect only if they come from natural sources. In other words, some research shows that taking beta-carotene supplements, another compound from the carotenoid group, not only does not reduce but can increase the risk of developing lung cancer. Truthfulness of statements. As already mentioned, all retrospective studies, as well as some cohort studies, are compromised by incomplete, unrealistic, or distorted statements of the respondents. For example, we are researching obesity, and it has been shown that obese people, especially women, underestimate their daily energy intake by about 700 to 800 kilocalories in their diet reports and avoid listing everything they consumed that day. You surely have friends who are obese and always claim to gain weight from the air, and maybe you have others who are on the verge of anorexia but constantly talk about how they can eat whatever they want. I'm not saying there are no reasons for the discrepancy between energy intake and body weight, but more often people are not telling the truth. Difference between laboratory and clinical research. Laboratory research carried out on non-living preparations or laboratory animals is used only as an introduction to clinical research because they can lead to conclusions that are not sustainable in the case of the human species. For example, laboratory studies have shown that a type of isoflavonoids, genistein, from soy inhibits the formation of blood clots, but in vivo studies conducted on respondents using supplements containing isoflavonoids from soy, unfortunately, did not confirm such an effect. Another example is related to saccharin. So, saccharin caused bladder cancer in experimental animals while it does not have such an impact on humans, and there is a scientific explanation for this concerning the difference in biochemical events in the bodies of mice and humans. The time that passes from exposure to effects. One of the biggest challenges for science in the field of nutrition is the time that has to pass before the first effects appear. Especially in young and healthy people, more than a decade can pass before the specificity of the diet leads to certain consequences. Ethical issues. Finally, research on humans is limited in that they must be carefully planned to cause the least possible harm to health, because respondents must not be treated like laboratory animals or objects. On the other hand, it is not easy to find a sufficient number of volunteers who will accept the risk and agree to participate in the experiment. That is all for now on this topic. Just to make it a little clearer why we still don't know enough about nutrition. It is no wonder that there is still a lot of room for those who want to sell magical, mystical, and medicinal formulas. When I was a student, I often passed by the market at Zeleny Venek where a man stood every day and sold creams for various ailments. His advertisement was simple, appealing to almost every passerby. He shouted, "Whoever has a pain in their arm, head, leg, so whatever hurts you, this cream will help, and it really has an 8% chance of helping you. That is a placebo." Thank you for your attention. If you liked this video, please click like, share, and subscribe buttons.